Hello and welcome to Policy and Politics with me, Tarun Nangia. Our guest today is the chairman of SREI Infrastructure Finance. He also serves as a board member of IIT Guwahati and the New Delhi Institute of Management. Mr. Kanoria, Hemant Kanoria, is our guest today. He also sits on the board of Kanoria Foundation, which has assets worth 6 billion under management. Today, he's going to broadly chat with us on how to achieve the vision where industries in India cannot only, in a sense, deliver world class quality, also develop world class products, but also be able to export. Because he comes from the finance side, the beauty of it is he's got a bird's eye view of various sectors as well as the problems of banks which banks are facing. NBFCs are in trouble, as we all know. How to get out of that situation, because if NBFCs are in trouble, then sure, a lot of businesses are going to be in trouble. He'll discuss all this with us. Let me thank you so much
My pleasure.
for your time and agreeing to share all these views with us. In say about a minute or so, we are about 4.5 months into the lockdown. Could you please share with me, as somebody who runs an NBFC, what is the condition of the industry, and maybe one or two things that you think should be urgently looked into?
See, I think that this pandemic, which was unexpected, and it has happened once, it happens once in a century. So again, that it has happened once in a century, because last time, as history says, that it was in 1918. So it's almost about after 100 years, we are seeing a pandemic of this proportion all over the world. So I will not blame any business people or leaders, because this has taken everyone by surprise. Even the astrologers were saying that everything is happening fine, everything is going. So even the astrologers have been taken by surprise. So once something of this proportion happens, then people need to first of all understand and become more resilient in whatever they are doing. Whether the government, they have to also become resilient. They have to react and act as things unfold, because no one knows that what is going to unfold in the future, how much time it is going to take. Like everyone thought that 1 or 2 months the pandemic will get arrested, but it has not happened. It has been going on and on. There's a second phase which is started off in Europe. So people thought that it has been controlled. So now no one has any idea that when this pandemic COVID-19 will come under control, whether it will take 3 months time further, it will take 6 months, 9 months. So therefore there is almost everything is in disarray. So in this state of affairs, I think that the only way that people need to, the businesses or people, first of all, it was the lives, which is very important to be saved. And then the livelihoods, the businesses must run, because the economy, what we were looking at, the economy will grow well. But now we can very clearly see that the economy will go for a downturn, and it has already started happening.
See, the economy is going through a lot of pain. Governments rely on feedback from industrialists like yourself to take policy decisions. Unless the right feedback goes to the policymakers, it's very difficult even for them, because there is something in papers, but the real pain is known through someone who actually runs. Now, you have that, in a sense, position where you see a lot of sectors, but let us pick, say, one sector, the infrastructure sector. For the government, this sector is very important, because the feedback that we get from government officers, ministers, all of that is that, see, infrastructure employs a lot of people. So for me, infrastructure is important. If my infrastructure projects start getting, thousands of people get employment. So in a sense, it helps employment in India. But today, infrastructure sector is going through a lot of pain. Could you share with us 2 or 3 points which the government should address in the next 6 months so that works can start and the pain that the infrastructure players, the contractors are going through, can be eased?
See, as you mentioned, that infrastructure plays a very important role in any economy, and especially a country like India, where we have to grow our infrastructure in a much better way because of the high population that we have. At the same time, the government has a strategy and a bigger picture.
Yes.
As to what they need to do for the infrastructure, which is extremely good. And everyone in the government, from the Prime Minister to the bureaucrats, everyone is aligned to the fact that infrastructure development has to happen for the country to grow. But at the same time, What has unfortunately happened is that the ground level realities have not surfaced, which has been taken care of by the government and addressed.
Right.
So, like today, you see that for the contractors, when the contractors or the construction companies, like last few years, they have been facing a huge problem.
Yes.
The infrastructure companies. So the bankers have become risk averse. They don't want to lend to the infrastructure sector. They don't want to lend to the contractors and the construction company, because anyone who is getting to deal with the government finds it very difficult that when they have a counterparty, which is the government, no one wants to take the risk.
Okay.
The players don't want to take the risk. The financial institutions, banks, they don't want to take the risk because they do not know that what will happen. Because how the counterparty, the government is going to react.
Okay.
Because there is no predictability and there is no clarity that in these circumstances, this will be the reaction. So let's suppose that if there is a dispute, how it will get resolved, no one has any idea about it. If there is a problem, if someone's money gets stuck up, so how will that money get released? There is no clarity. So therefore, it can get released immediately. It may take 1 year's time. It may take 5 years time. It may take 50 years time. So therefore, it can continue.
If I'm
Please.
allowed to interrupt you, NHI, there were a lot of money of a lot of contractors is stuck up. One thing we have to accept that the government is also, in a sense, has some shortage of funds, but it has to prioritize. How should it prioritize in your view?
See, it is very simple. There are two parts of it. One, if there is a dispute, I think it is important to address the dispute and say that this is the payment which is due.
Okay.
Now, NHI may, or if there is an arbitration award which is against NHI, there are two different things altogether. One is addressing the dispute, then making the payment. So, if the dispute is addressed and if the contractor, the construction company or the concessionaire, they exactly know that what is the amount which they are going to get from NHI. So, at least the financial institutions who have financed them, the banks and the client, they are aware about the amount. Now, how the payment will be made? Maybe NHI may not have the money. So, it can be very easily addressed. They may say we will make a payment in 5 years' time. We will make a payment in 10 years' time.
You mean give us clarity so that we can plan finances?
Yes. So, therefore, planning of the finances is very simple. But uncertainty is something which you cannot plan
You
for.
mean the contractor should know when he is going to get the money? It should not be
First
that
of all, how much of amount that he is going to get?
that is point number one.
Okay. And then when he is going to get?
When he is going to get.
So if these two are solved, then I do not see that there is any problem. See, if both are mixed up,
Yes.
what happens is that, as you very rightly mentioned, that NHI may not be having money available. So they may think that to delay the addressal of the dispute and to delay the arbitration award payments by taking it after the arbitration award is made, then take it to the High Court and then to the Appellate Court, then to the Supreme Court and fight for another 5 to 10 years. At least they are able to get 5 to 10 years time. In the meantime, two things will happen. That company may not be in a position to sustain the uncertainty and will die.
Yes.
So therefore, then this payment need not be made.
Yes.
So is that the objective? I don't think so. Then that is the objective of the government, because the government clearly does not want that companies should close down.
So you mean this decision is required at a higher level in the government that prioritize the infrastructure sector, give a payment plan to all the contractors that when and how you can pay, so that they will take loans accordingly to pay their staff. So you are requesting this, that this one
Exactly.
thing.
A clarity should be there that if there, so example, there is an arbitration award. Someone has got an arbitration award of 100 crore. Now this 100 crore of arbitration award, arbitration process
Yes.
has been finalized by NHI in their document only.
Yes.
Because it is in their concession agreement or their contract that arbitration process has been articulated.
Yes.
So if they follow that arbitration process, the arbitrators also which are appointed are independent people. There are 3 arbitrators.
Yes.
So once the award comes in,
Yes.
then the NHI should make the payment or the government.
One important point I want to see, a lot of in a sense people in the construction business and also the infrastructure business, more so the infrastructure, have told me that the sanctity of the arbitral award in India is under question, because it is now for certain that the government appeals in every award. Do you think that now someone senior at the level of or the high office in the government should intervene and say that arbitration as a process was designed to give certainty to dispute redressal. That is not happening in India.
So, see, basically two things, what you very correctly mentioned. One is that the government should give a clear-cut direction that if the arbitration award comes in, whether it is in the favor of the government or against the government, it should be honored.
Yes.
Or they should scrap the arbitration
Yes.
process from their document and say that if there is a dispute, let people go to the court.
You've said of it. In fact, I really like Mr. Kanoria puts this in such beautiful perspective. He says, if you don't want arbitration, just don't do it. But unnecessarily taking time will collapse the company, which the government doesn't want today. Government doesn't want any, and Prime Minister says it all the time, that I want companies in India to prosper. In fact, now they say Atmanirbhar Bharat, which means they want you to do better, and you are actually sharing how things can be done better. Coming to operational issues, RBI cut down the interest rates, a positive move by the government and long-standing demand of the industry to be competitive. Banks are not translating into lower credit for businesses. You run an NBFC. What has been your experience, and what would you urge the government to do?
See, the banks are a little in the situation of a scare because they see the devil in the deep sea.
Okay.
So there's a call between the devil and the deep sea.
Okay.
If they lend and if the money does not come back, then there will be investigations against them. The client will be deemed to be a willful defaulter or a fraud, or there will be investigation which will get started. Every businessman, no businessman who wants to start the business wants to be declared as a willful defaulter or a fraud.
Okay.
The business may fail for many reasons.
Okay.
But if they get that categorization
Okay.
and that branding,
Yes.
so then no one wants to take the risk of getting into business.
Yes.
So I think that the first thing that we have to start with the premise that business people are not thieves.
Yes.
The businesses can get into genuine problems.
Yes.
Okay, so therefore, when any business fails, please make the dissection of that and see that whether there was an element of fraud or it
Is it
was
genuine?
genuine mistake.
But this is now for what's already happened. Today, if they are not giving loans for that, what is the solution? Because
So they will not. So unless we correct the system, so if every business has to face being a willful defaulter or fraud or basically the inquiry from the enforcement or CBI or any other agencies, SFIO and all, so why should the bankers take the risk? Because if they take a risk today as a financial institution, if I have to take a risk in infrastructure projects, I don't take the risk.
you don't.
No.
So
Because-
in a sense, you are known as an infrastructure finance firm.
Yes, but last 3-4 years I have not been taking that risk.
And why is that so?
The reason being because my clients
Yes.
who have taken money, if there is anything, if they failed in their businesses, there is an investigation against them.
Yes.
If there is an investigation against them, then our officers are also entangled in that why did you give this loan?
Oh.
So therefore, our officers feel that why should we take that risk? Because tomorrow if any business fails, there will be an investigation, and instead of doing business, we will be spending more time with the investigating agencies.
That's a fair point.
So that is the reason people don't want to lend. So therefore, I have to push my team members, the officers in the company,
To lend.
to please lend to the infrastructure companies, but they are so scared to doing it. Similarly, similar situation with the banks.
So I want to get it clear from you. The Prime Minister's office and the senior people in the government have good intentions. They think that the industry should lend. So RBI also now reduces rates. But the vision at the top office is not getting realized on ground because the practical problem is at the bank level and the agency level, which is CBI, ED, etc. So basically, the message should go to the higher office that please address, because as we know, the Prime Minister takes presentation in slides, give me top 3 or top 4 points which I can solve. This is the message that needs to go.
Yeah.
But what is that message? The message is that the agencies shouldn't be overzealous, or the message, according to you, is that the bank's officers should be assured that they will not be hauled up by the agencies. What is that message that needs to
See, basically, it is the fabric of trust has weakened in the country
Okay.
in the few years.
Okay.
So I think that this is very important to strengthen that fabric of trust. Because if we do not trust the other person and we are living in that world of mistrust.
Yeah.
It's like a ghost in the mind of a person.
Yes.
So wherever the person goes, if he hides somewhere also,
Yes.
the ghost will be with him because it's in the mind.
Okay.
So I think that this is something which is very important, where a clear-cut message should go to the agencies, should go to the banks, and to the businesses at large, that we trust you.
Okay.
If there are a couple of people who may be errant, so we will take action against them.
But not everybody is a thief.
But not everyone. The businesses can fail. There can be problems in the business. Let's suppose today, in the last 5 months, due to the pandemic, many of the businesses are facing problems.
Yes.
And it is genuine, because if you see the entire tourism sector, the hospitality sector, even the healthcare sector, if you find manufacturing, everyone is facing a problem. After 3 to 6 months, if you now start saying that because of this problem, the people who have not been in a position to manage, to get solutions to these problems, and because of that, the businesses fail, and you have investigating agencies, you have bankers who get scared, so what will happen? There will be a further fall. It is not going to help anyone. So at this particular time, it is important that the necessary forbearance has to be given, and an understanding, the confidence which is to be instilled in the banks, that please go out, help your clients, see that they survive. Because if they do not survive and if they die, then you have a huge NPL. Over and above that, the bankers will also die.
See, there is a generalized statement in India. I interact with a lot of MSME associations. They say that in the past so many years, in the past 15 years or so, since it's 2005, a lot of MSMEs in India have turned traders because of access to capital, other issues. Is it a very generalized statement, or is it in some part a true statement in your view?
No, I think that in the last 7-8 years it has happened more, because what has happened that there is, you see, a banking business has always been based on trust and an assessment of the risk.
Yes.
So earlier, the banks used to have, I remember that when I was a kid,
Yes.
and when our businesses were there, we used to have, many of the public sector banks had the concept of munsifs.
Yes.
Okay, and what these people did, they used to get the market information about those businesses, about the promoters, and then the banks, and help the bank manage the risk.
Okay.
And an assessment was done, and even the bank managers were basically adept in doing a proper risk assessment of both the promoters and the businesses.
Yes.
And then you lend. Once any bank, like us also as financial institutions, when we lend, we see that we are partners to that particular business. So if the business fails, then we have a problem, because just making a provision, writing out of as an NPA is not the solution.
Yes.
That you have to do. So there are two segments which has to be made from the banking perspective also. One is the consumer loans, etc., where definitely you have to have certain parameters, that if a person does not pay in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, then you have to make certain provisions, because it is not possible to go after everyone. At the same time, there should be a second segment which is for the business, where the entire provisioning norms have to be more practical.
Okay.
It cannot be based on arithmetical calculation.
Okay.
That if your parameter, the blood pressure is between 80 to 120, then you are fit, then you will be supported. As soon as it goes to 125, then you will be taken to the hospital. 140, you will be taken to the crematorium.
See, something which I wrote on last week is the issue of differential interest rates for corporates whose ratings even slide by a bit. Companies have suffered in the past 1.5 years, but you increase the interest rates for those companies when they need handholding the most. So this policy of differential interest rates, do you think should be relooked at?
Definitely. As I said, that you see that you cannot define a real life business into parameters. It's like, person's health. If the blood pressure, there is a range, but that does not mean that if a person is not in that range, he should be admitted to the hospital.
Yes.
Let's suppose that the government comes out in with a wisdom, or the WHO in their wisdom declares that people who are not having a blood pressure between 120 80 to 120, they should be straight away taken to the hospital.
Yes.
If it is below this
I will
range.
tell you a practical example. My audience understands it best. Uh, very much in central Delhi, there is one gentleman whom I met very recently. He runs a business with a yearly revenue of about $3.5 billion. He was doing very well until 2017. After 2017, there has been certain problems in his business, and of course, the ratings have affected. The bank interest rates have gone up for him. And he says the difference between bank interest rates is up to 5% between the good performing companies and when you slides. A very distraught man, he tells me, Tarun, when I was at my peak, bank chairman of India's leading public sector banks used to be waiting outside my office for half an hour just to get an appointment to be able to finance me. Those very people are hesitant to even give me time today, though I have committed to run the business. I am selling and leasing back equipment so that I can run it. They also know why are they making it expensive for me to run the business and produce when I need the help the most? It was his dilemma. I am sure it must be the dilemma of many industrialists around the country. Do you think this is the first thing that the government must solve? This whole differential rates problem. I mean, I'm just wanting a frank view whether this apprehension is right.
No, the apprehension is correct. You see, what happens is that when a person is not in a position to pay on time,
Yes.
then the risk increases. So therefore, you increase the interest rate. By virtue of that,
Yes.
the solution is not there.
No,
Because that guy will get even more sick. Because if you increase the interest rate, so there has to be a cap on how much it can be taken. That's why I said that everything is not an arithmetical calculation. So banking, financing business is not an arithmetical calculation that you say that this is what you do, this is the rating which you define. And what we have done is that we have tried to ape the systems in the West.
yes.
West is already having it's a developed economy where you have pension funds, you have provident funds, you have endowment funds, you have so many funds which are ready to take. Yeah, you can access. They are ready to put money into equity. They are ready to put money into high risk junk bonds, etc. But India, you don't have a concept of junk
So
bonds.
even except for banks, the stock market, there is very little room for raising funds. That's a fair point. In my interaction recently and over the past few years, there has been a lot of statements that people have in important positions have made that यार अब तो हमको foreign capital ही बचाएगा, ये बाहर वाले आके invest करेंगे. Is this attitude right?
No, I don't think so. You see that if, let us suppose that today,
Yeah.
if we find that Africa, everyone knows
Yes.
that it is a great opportunity,
Yes.
but still people don't go and invest in Africa. Why?
If I am to understand, wherever governments are giving institutionalized support, like China, they are one of the largest investors in Africa, but the government supports the businesses investing. It is government assisted support. Or second, if I may take the liberty, copper sector, copper concentrate is secured from Chile. So the Japan government has entered into long-term finance-linked agreements with the Chilean government so that copper, so government-assisted investment happens, in my view, but private sector on its own will be vary.
Exactly. So because what does the private sector do? The private sector first of all goes and finds out and basically smells the environment at the local level.
Level.
Yeah. So let us suppose that today, if someone has to make an investment into Europe,
Yes.
or in the US,
Yes.
they will easily go and do it.
Yes.
Because they know that the environment is understandable, everything is predictable.
Yes.
The businesses may have its ups and downs, but things are predictable.
Even policy changes will not happen at the drop of a hat.
So today, in India, when a person comes from outside, who are the people who will be coming in? You see, there are many investors who keep on approaching us and they want to look at investment opportunities in various companies. So either they will go in for IT, technology, because they know the technology, they will be
Not
a growth.
government department. Huh?
Not government. Second is that they will go in for those particular investments where they are finding
Yes.
that it is available, a dollar stuff is available at 10 cents.
Yes.
3 years back it was 20 cents, now it is 5 to 10 cents. So if they get something so if we want to sell our country
Yes.
cheap to the foreign investors, this is the right opportunity.
See, the second, that's a good way to put it. See, I agree with you. In my interaction with the vice chairman of a Japanese car maker, he told me that my parent company has stopped allotting me models. When I asked him why, he said, Tarun, they says that you as CEO and Vice Chairman don't know what policy decisions your government takes. It changes every year. And this has been happening for 20 years. If you don't know, then why should I trust you to, one plant will cost me 300-400 crores. So I cannot commit that investment if you're not giving me a 5-year policy certainty. So if it happens at car manufacturers, I'm sure it happens with other industries as well. Now, do you think we should make a distinction between FDI and replacement capital? Because whenever we see a foreign company investing and buying an existing company, we term it as an FDI. But in effect, it's replacement capital because it's just one capital, no new asset is created. Do you think that distinction needs to be made as a country?
No, definitely. I think that we should look at that what are the investments which are being made into new projects, into greenfield projects.
Yes.
And if you look at that, it has substantially come down.
Yes.
The reason being because people are not in a position to know today to set up a industry. See, we are businessmen who are in India.
Yes.
We have been engaged in not only financing but also making investments and all.
Yes.
Each project takes anywhere from the start to finish.
Yes.
Anywhere from 5 years to 10 years.
Okay.
That is a gestation.
Yes.
Which is required. Because there are umpteen number of clearances, there are umpteen number of changes which will happen. So by the time the project starts, the interest and the pre-operative cost is almost about 25 to 40% of the project cost.
Right.
So that is the reason why the project becomes more expensive. Then it becomes unviable because there is no certainty that when all the clearances will come in. So we have been also trying to, because the government is progressive, the government wants to get investments to come in. So we have been suggesting to the government that you should create a window where you should mention that there should be a deemed approval policy. A deemed approval is that for everything, all the clearances
are deemed approved,
that a certain time frame should be defined. Within that time frame, if you do not get a negative reply, then it is deemed approval. If you get a negative reply also, then you escalate it.
Because if you have shared it with me, that's good. Next time, whenever we meet, I would want to get a list of those 60-65 approvals. And if I could get your time and if you give us time, then I would like to discuss which of them are necessary, which could be done away with. The government in its view is positive about doing away with unnecessary approvals. If we can sit and you can share with us that, okay, these 20 out of 50 are not required at all, then maybe we can make some effective progress as far as policy decision, because the central government will direct the states. Hope some things will change, because as I understood in today's interview, you see a lot of problems come at the ground level, not at the policy level in the central government. It's in the effectuating the action. So have you, or as part of any association, have you shared these demands with the government that, maybe that they could look into this in the coming 2-3 months?
See, that has been a part of the culture of our group.
Okay.
For the last 30 years from SREI also, because when we started off, the infrastructure sector in India had not opened up.
Yes.
So it has only been in close association with the government, engagements. We have been continuously putting up our thoughts.
Yes.
And also with practical solutions, what the government can come up with, the policy changes, and many of the changes the government has brought in the policy over a period of time, over 30 years. Otherwise, the infrastructure would not have developed to the extent that it has.
Yes.
Now also, on an ongoing basis, we continuously keep on writing from our companies, from the respective companies, we keep on writing to the Prime Minister, to the Finance Minister, to the various authorities we are there.
Right.
From the associations, we keep on representing. So all the points which I have expressed to you today, all these have been sent to the government from time to time, and we are continuously doing it. Because we feel that as citizens, as responsible citizens, we have to continuously flag off issues to the government in a structured manner.
And my last question to you today would be, is there a threat to the insolvency of the NBFCs? Is that a risk you foresee, or you think you will sail through, or is that a real threat that we must be aware of?
No, you see that today what has happened, that NBFCs, there are two parts of it. Any organization needs to have access to its raw material.
Yes.
And the raw material must be from multiple sources, because if it is only one source, then the survival of that institution itself becomes threatened.
Yes.
And then when it is lending also, at that particular time it has to exercise caution in the lending so that the money is safe. So for the NBFCs today, fortunately or unfortunately, I will say more unfortunately, the access to funds is only available through banks.
Okay.
Because the mutual fund markets have dried up, the bond market has dried up.
Yes.
NBFCs, most of the NBFCs are not in a position to take public deposits also.
Yes.
So therefore, where do you access capital? And that is a raw material. So if you do not get the continuous supply of raw material, it's like a bank.
Okay.
So if the bank does not, if they cannot raise current, if they cannot open current accounts, if they cannot have savings account, if they cannot have fixed deposit, so they are not having perennial source of funding on the liability side of it. So how would they continue?
Okay.
So similarly, the first issue which needs to be addressed by the government and the regulator is that whether we want NBFCs to be there in our ecosystem or not.
Okay.
If we want them to be there, then how do we address the issue for them to access their raw material, which is fund?
Yes.
And what are the multiple sources? So that exercise is not, we have not gone through it.
Okay.
From the top level, this has not unfortunately happened. And we have been trying to flag this off. So there are certain regulations which are coming in, which is addressing A issue and the B issue and the C issue. So we are trying to address ABC issues. But the fundamental
is not
issue
unaddressed.
is not getting addressed.
Very beautifully put by Mr. Hemant Kanoria. First of all, I'll thank you for sharing your time and giving us opportunity to interview you today. It's been good chatting with you. I think our
My
viewers
pleasure
will
too.
like it. The government, of course, will have received some feedback. Very soon, we would like to revisit some of these issues to see if they have been addressed. Because I think in these times, quick action is needed on the government's part to ensure the industry is handheld to health. Thank you, viewers, for joining us on today's episode of Policy and Politics. We will be back next week with another interesting guest and another interesting episode. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.